the genesis of this of PlayFi really came from us building our own Web3 game.
The idea that if Web3 just gets good enough, then eventually everything will automatically move to Web3.
One of the areas that we realized PlayFi could really sort of change the game with, pardon the pun, is by going real time.
I suspect the average end user will end up using it for gas and for delegation.
We'll need enough processing power that we can ingest terabytes, really, of streaming data and turn it into very small packets that we can store on the blockchain. Big amount of revenue that isn't cannibalizing other games, but it just hasn't been captured yet.
Welcome back to DeFi Revelations. My name's Kirk, the head of business development with Revelo Intel. Today, we have the founders of PlayFi. PlayFi is a decentralized AI and data platform bringing Web3 features to the world's most popular games. We hope you enjoy the episode. Ben, Jyro, welcome to DeFi Revelations. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Absolutely. So, generally, I want to make sure that the audience gets a pretty good idea of, your guys' background prior to coming into crypto, or maybe you've been in crypto your whole life. Like I know, Jyro, you've basically been in it your whole life now, from what you were saying a minute ago. but Ben, why don't you kick us off and kind of give us a background on yourself and how you came into crypto and, I guess what compelled you to get into it, at the end of the day?
Compelled is the right word. I was crypto adjacent for many years. I was running a digital agency in Australia and busy, busy 150 people. I knew that Bitcoin was happening and I knew that Ethereum was happening, and we would sort of do little research projects and things, but I never had the time, never had the vacation, because you're running your own business, to really just sit down and understand it. And it wasn't until I was able to exit that business that I really had the time to dive in and discover, what people were so excited about. And I think it was maybe 2017, I sort of looked at Bitcoin, for the first time, and I was hooked. And then you sort of follow the thread, right? You look at the blue chips, and then you start to look at alts, and then I became really curious about Web3 gaming, and that followed me into then building a Web3 gaming project, which is how I met Jyro. And so I think for me, it's been a fascinating journey. It's the only industry that I've ever got to work in that it feels like every day when I wake up, there is something new. There is a new, fresh idea, and I love that. And I've met some of the best people I've ever got to work with in crypto. Also met some of the worst, but I've made some really great friends and connections being part of, I guess a relatively small group of the human population that believe this is a force for good and a force for change.
Awesome. Jyro, what about yourself? I know you said, 2014?
Yeah, no, I've been in the crypto space for a long time. So, I love experimental technologies and I love community. So my background is actually professionally in game development. So I've been in the New York City game development scene professionally for about 13, 14 years now. And I've always loved playing with the new tech in those times, like doing the VR stuff, the augmented reality sort of tools, things that do community engagement, user-generated content. So I love that, and I love the community aspects that comes along with that. And so as, early crypto times like 2014, as I'm just like browsing what's going on, on Reddit and stuff like that, coming across a lot of these discussions, it was a pretty natural fit because this was just another place where there was like a really community driven focus, especially, early times. It was so focused on these community run content because there were no big players really yet in the scene, right? And new technologies, right? And like what sort of that open sky aspect of like, what does it look like to use these new technologies in places? So I was in both those communities like pretty solidly separately for a long time, just because in 2014, 15, 16, the technology in the Web3 space just wasn't really there yet. Like people were trying to make some games work, but we're like in early NFT days at this point, right? Like there wasn't a lot going on. And in the last few years, I feel like really the technology, the level of like competency and just like seriousness that the Web3 industry is taking itself at this point matches what I think is necessary to like make these successful things, both in the game space and what we're doing in sort of the greater like infrastructure space, like solving these some more difficult problems, creating these things people really actually want to use and care about. So I think we're past that like looking for problems to solve and actually at that like solving cool problems phase. And so I'm really excited to bring those two worlds together because they're both things I've cared about for a while.
Awesome, awesome. So I guess, to segue into PlayFi, right? What compelled you guys to really think about building, blockchain infrastructure for gaming? I think, at least throughout my time, in crypto, right? I think, there's been a lot of different use cases for blockchain and gaming that people have tried to highlight, whether it's, trading Call of Duty skins, on the blockchain, the monetization of, all of that, that I think everybody is obviously very bullish on from that perspective, but I don't know about the practicality of it. So what was that compelling factor that you guys really thought blockchain is going to solve this problem, or it's gonna actually improve the existing experience?
I mean, PlayFi is an AI and data layer for mass market gaming, and we. This is my sixth startup. The thing I always try and do is anchor in a problem that exists for me, that exists for my peers and my colleagues, and sort of iterate on that. And the genesis of PlayFi really came from us building our own Web3 game. We launched 3 game modes. We've had some with that game some breakout success on Arbitrum, but we kept running into these problems that weren't user acquisition problems. They weren't user engagement problems. They were sort of technical hurdles that we felt the blockchain could help us work through. As we started to connect with mass market, indie, AAA publishers and studios, we discovered that some of those same problems exist as well. And what had changed in sort of the 3 years since we started building that game was a genuine openness and curiosity around maybe these problems can be solved on chain, and those problems typically relate to how do you get data out of games in a real time fashion and enable people to build permissionless experiences on top. Masari, the analysts, their estimate is that there's a $10 billion market on top of Fortnite alone. So more revenue than the game makes itself in building competitions and tournaments and prediction markets and data-driven creator economies over the top of Fortnite. And that was probably the spur. It was like, we've got this problem. We're speaking to other publishers we're speaking to publishers and studios. They've got this problem. And then the analysts are sort of saying there's this big amount of revenue that isn't cannibalizing other games, but it just hasn't been captured yet. And then Jyro, you sort of came at it from a different angle because you've been building games for a decade or more.
Yeah. So I think there's a bit of a kind of fallacy right now in the Web3 space, which is the idea that if Web3 just gets good enough, then eventually everything will automatically move to Web3. Like eventually Valve will just put Counter-Strike on the blockchain. And I've been making games for a long time, and I just don't think that's true. And that I don't think any singular tech stack is going to capture all of this, whatever, $300 billion market from tiny indie studios to, AAA massive companies, right? But so the real problem, though, is that right now, games companies aren't either incentivized financially or logistically to create a lot of these systems that Ben was talking about, these user-generated content, this like additional layer on top of these cool games. Valve is very heavily incentivized to own all their Counter-Strike data, to own the marketplace, to own the user information, to own like the curation of all the protocols and systems and maps and all that kind of stuff. And it's not malice. It's just like, there's no reason for them to spend a lot of money opening up an API or open sourcing these elements more than they already have to users. It doesn't financially make sense for them, but they still want people to play tournaments on Counter-Strike. They still want people to bet on Counter-Strike. They still want people to trade skins in Counter-Strike. They can't officially endorse those things, but like they want it to happen, right? Nintendo's the same way. Like Nintendo is one of the most like closed off, walled garden sort of like game developers out there. I love Nintendo. I play their games, but there is no Mario Kart API, like full stop. There's just no way to get that data out of it, but they still want people to play Mario Kart tournaments. They still want people to care about their Mario Kart stats. And so as a game developer, I know that it sucks to build those things from an expense and logistics perspective, and it's hard to justify those things from a financial perspective. And so what PlayFi does is it says, don't worry about that. You as game developers don't need to solve that problem because we're going to create ways to capture that game data, to record a Mario Kart game without API access, without developer integration, without these permission systems, without work on the players or developers. capture all that cool information, what track you're playing on, what your fastest times are, how you're doing against other people, and then put that into a really actionable system where people can make whatever they want. If you want to make something that lets you track your speed run stats on a particular course, great, here's that data. If you want to track a tournament that automatically progresses based on who you're racing against, great, here's the data for all those different games. So we're solving problems that I have had as a game developer and that I've had as a player, which is like games data availability right now is really siloed and really kind of, disincentivized.
Alchemix Finance empowers you to spend and save at the same time with a self-repaying, interest-free, and non-liquidatable loan. Deposit your assets and access your future yield now. Available on Mainnet, Optimism, and Arbitrum. Head to alchemix.fi to get started. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I think, one of the things I think about, when it comes to not just gaming, but like even other industries that, there's a lot of transactions, there's a lot of microtransactions going on, is like the cost of it, right? And, obviously I think we've seen some progression from, the Ethereum tech stack, and, obviously Solana and some of these other L1s trying to, get to a point where, costs are negligible enough that it's feasible, right? So touch on that a little bit. Like what are you guys thinking about from an improvement perspective that you guys can have an impact on that? I know you're building, I think, on ZK Sync, if memory serves. So what attracted you to maybe like that tech stack, and what advantages do you see to help try to mitigate those costs and bring them down to, sub-earth, subterranean levels?
At a high level, there's, I saw yesterday that Web3 gaming hit 3.3 monthly active users this month, which is the highest it's ever been. It's exciting, and it's 0.1%, I guess, of the total people playing games. I think people conflate Web3 gaming entrepreneurs, that is, people who love to try and make money out of gaming or think that gaming will make money on chain, from people who are players. And most players you speak to, I don't think it's that they're opposed to Web3 gaming. They just don't understand the point of it, because the reason they play games is for fun and community and things like that. So cost is really important. When we were looking at all the options available to us on chain, one of the areas that we realized PlayFi could really sort of change the game with, pardon the pun, is by going real time. And that is most game data runs on a hefty lag, and can be anywhere from hours to days. Most games are consumed in real time. Most streams are watched in real time by thousands of people. And so for us, finding a chain that could enable us to go real time and do that affordably was really important. And ZK Sync does that. And it does that with some really clever engineering that ensures that we don't need to pay gas every time we try and find out what's happening in a game, but rather when something changes in a game, that's when we incur those costs. That difference alone, paired with some of the advantages around machine learning, mean that this thing that literally 2 years ago wouldn't have been possible because the unit economics wouldn't have added up, is now not only possible, but it's possible to do it in real time.
The economics of it are really important. I think what Ben was saying, really to reiterate on it, is that previously, if you wanted to ask a question on a blockchain, you had to ask that question and pay the fee associated with that question. Essentially, if there was, I want access from this oracle, if you want to do a chain link thing, you have to pay chain link to find out the information. But with zero knowledge proofs, it's just a state difference. So we only need to settle down to base layer at the end of an entire block. So you can ask a question 1,000 times at one of our blocks, settle it down to Ethereum, and you pay one transaction fee for all those questions. So it works really, really good. It's really cheap and fast already because it's one of just like a modern L2 built on ZK tech. Additionally, in the economic system design of what we're doing, your average end user won't know they're paying gas and won't care. And the unit economics work out such that everyone along the way is incentivized. So imagine you have a tournament and you want to charge $10 entry fees for the tournament. It's super standard. If you're having an 8-man tournament, you'll take an $80 entry fees and you'll pay out $70 in prizes, right? And you keep the $10. So if you, as a person that's running this tech stack, are going to say, okay, well, I know my Oracle costs because I have to access this Oracle 1,000 times over this couple hours of gameplay are going to be 50 cents. You go, that's just the operating cost. I'm going to make $4.50, for every whatever I put in, or, so yeah, you take in $10, you pay 50 cents in fees to somebody somewhere, just like you probably pay 50 cents in fees to AWS or wherever your web page hosting is. It's just a cost of doing business. but you don't care because you're making $9 on every tournament. And so you're heavily incentivized to do that. And the end users, those players, they're just paying with a credit card. They're paying $10 for a tournament. And they don't give a heck what like is going on behind the scenes. They don't care what infrastructure you're running. So we're really kind of focused on just like not just abstracting that away for the end user, but also for the people that are involved in it. They feel good about that cost because it's so small and enables them to not have to deal with a lot of the problems of dispute resolution and manual reporting and problem solving and data collection. So they're like 50 cents. Great.
Yeah, you can't argue with that, can you? So I'm curious about, I guess the economic model of the protocol, right? Where do you guys see opportunities for like PlayFi to earn the fees and to make money, to ultimately generate revenue for the protocol, and I guess potentially maybe for token holders down the road. But how do the economics work?
Yeah, I'm going to let Jyro dig into this one, but to set the scene, I think the thing that differentiates PlayFi from a lot of other infrastructure players and a lot of DeFi players is that we are building this on top of a very well established, very, very vibrant existing market, and we are essentially supply side disruption. So if you think about what Uber did, and we use this as an internal reference a lot, Uber came along and said, well, people are catching taxis. That's an established pattern. When you go to a new city, catching a taxi can be painful. You don't know who to contact. And we can offer this sort of service that it doesn't matter whether you're in Chicago or New York or LA, you can catch a taxi. And it essentially increased the amount of taxis that people caught because it created a convenience layer over top of that service. For us, it's similar. It's like people are already playing games. There's 3.3 billion people playing 100,000 games every day. So we don't need to rip enormous fees out of a certain game or a certain audience. Our goal is to be accretive over the top of all that already existing activity. And then, Jyro, maybe you want to talk about like the faucets and things that we've got to power all this.
Yeah. So it's a really cool system I think we've got going on where essentially everyone along the way is incentivized to create good content and act well within the ecosystem, which combines a lot of traditional Web3 and sort of Web2 elements. So people that get Play, essentially we're going to be using Play as our gas token, our native currency, and we're going to be also using that for anything to do with data, both coming in and out. So if you upload quality data, if you upload data that's accessed frequently, that's indexed well, that's complete, you're going to receive Play. So uploading data gets you Play. If you are processing and storing data, we have these modular nodes, and what they do is they essentially take in all that data, they turn that half hour of Rocket League video down into a little 20-line text document. They'll be doing that processing and then storing it on this decentralized network of modular nodes. If you're doing that processing and storage, you're going to receive Play because you're contributing to the network. And then the people that are writing the oracles that are going to be accessing this data, they can choose what fees they want to charge in Play for accessing the oracle. And so they're going to be getting Play as people use it. I envision that a lot of people will be all three of these because you're very incentivized to upload good data, process that data, and then create ways for people to action that data. So a lot of people will be, I think, taking chunks out of all three of these to create themselves a nice little economic incentive. And now you have an ecosystem with good data that's highly optimized and highly accessible. And so now anyone who wants to use those oracles, these stat tracking people, these tournament creators, these people that want to trade assets, we're working with external other chains and other entities, both Web2 and Web3. So we're building oracles on top of Multiverse X, for example. We have a partnership with them. So their sovereign chains will be able to read data from our Play-based infrastructure as well. And so they'll be paying in Play tokens to access that. And the better the data is, the more powerful it is, the more optimized it is, the more they want to use it. And so that's the inflow in addition to just the normal economic systems like gas. And so it kind of like snowballs in that the better a job that people are doing, the more incentivized they are, the more people go, well, I want to make a Fortnite betting game. So like, this is where I'm going to go to do it. And again, we're back to like, I'll pay 50 cents, to make that happen. That's fine with me. So it's a nice like faucet system out to the contributors and then input system from the people that can then monetize it further down the road by creating these systems that they can advertise or charge for.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And so, I guess just from a token perspective for a second, it's being rewarded a lot, right? Like you're rewarding people in Play. Have you guys thought about the other side of it? Where do you guys have any kind of like sticky mechanisms you're thinking about, or creative mechanisms to incentivize people to hold play, at the same time, or stake it for network rewards or however? Can you walk me through that a little bit as well?
Absolutely. So in addition to paying play into these economic systems, which will again be ongoing things. If there's a thing that's an Oracle doing, you want to have play to pay your costs. But there's also our nodes are going to be settling down to base layer. We're going to be using eigenlayer and an AVS system attached to that. And so you'll be staking both play and ETH to settle down to eigenlayer. And so it'll be a staking and slashing mechanism that will allow the more you stake, the more you have invested inside of this, the better acting you are, the better share of rewards you get. So as a node operator, you're highly incentivized to have lots of play and stake it into the node operating systems. Additionally, we're going to be having delegation for that. So if you're somebody who just wants to be a regular user and earn a share of that stakers, of that node operator's fees, what you can do is you can delegate to them, kind of like how like the Cosmos ecosystem works, where you can delegate to one of the validators. And so, yeah, you delegate to them, they get 10% of everything, and you take 1% of that if you've delegated 10% of their total stake, kind of normal economics. So if you just want to hold the play token and either secure the network with it as a node operator and earn rewards for that, or as a user, delegate to a node operator that's going to secure the network and earn rewards from that, those are also both viable metrics. And I suspect the average end user will end up using it for gas and for delegation, just like, again, in a Cosmos sort of ecosystem or Ethereum. And the power users will have a stack that they're cycling through the system to operate their tools.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I guess just taking that a step further, we're talking about the token, maybe the different mechanisms from a go-to-market perspective, right? When you're trying to bootstrap activity, on the system, where are you guys seeing most of your efforts, I guess, focused towards, right? Is it, I mean, like, obviously, if I'm thinking about it from like a traditional, like, L1 or L2, everybody's focused on, okay, let me go get, I need to go get some decentralized exchanges. I need to go get some lending. I need to get, X, Y, and Z, primitives on my, stable coins and primitives on my chain. But you guys almost have to worry, well, not worry, you guys have to think about a little bit further, obviously, right? You've got to, maybe you have a DeFi aspect a little bit, but you also have to go after, game developers and publishers. And so where are you guys seeing, I guess, most of your efforts focused when you're thinking about bootstrapping the initial activity on the system?
I think partnerships will be key. And PlayFi is not a gaming ecosystem. It's not even a gaming chain. Like we're not building this for games to come and deploy on. What we are is a aggregator of data from as many games as we can, and making that available to as many builders as we can. So partnerships are key. We've got some announcements coming up in the next month where we're partnering with some really great chains that have existing gaming ecosystems where our PlayFi oracles are going to be up and running on their chains as quickly as we can. And that's probably more of our focus, is rather than trying to bring people onto our chain, is making sure that our data can live across Web3. I think there will be a DeFi element. Like when you think about marketplaces and exchange, one of the things that we've observed in most mass market gaming marketplaces, whether it's an official store or whether it's something like people swapping skins on Reddit, liquidity is a real issue. And I think that's a primitive that we can and should bring into mass market gaming. It seems ridiculous to me that in 2024, if you want to sell a gaming asset, then you are doing that into essentially no liquidity. You just list it and hope someone buys it. And I think that's something that we're seeing some publishers and studios really warm up to. They may not be warm on the overall Web3 gaming premise and NFTs and things like that, but hey, giving some liquidity into a marketplace is something that they're really interested in. And that's something that is uniquely, I think, achievable on what we're building with PlayFi. So I think we will have that. I think we'll also see people building speculative markets over the top of in-game assets. I think that's inevitable. And I think, what people do with the data will be fascinating to see.
Yeah. So I guess on that level then too. So, and this is just my tokenization brain or tokenization hat on, right? So it's almost like there needs to be a tokenization mechanism, right? Or I'm sure you guys are thinking about partnering maybe with a tokenization provider, of sorts that would, because at the end of the day, if I want to trade a skin, I've got to tokenize that skin, bring it on chain, right? So go ahead.
So what's cool is that with our system, you don't. So again, I think that's another one of those fallacies where right now the idea of, oh, I want to trade an asset on chain, I need to move that asset onto the chain, move it over, and then somehow, again, that requires almost like an integration on the developer's end, where now they say, okay, I recognize that this Ethereum asset is now representative of our game, and I'll move it on our back end. But so, for example, trading a Counter-Strike skin, I don't anticipate they'll ever move that off of their own centralized servers or will ever tokenize it. As a game developer, I would not do that either. But what we can do, because we're doing all this monitoring of like video feeds, system data, like scraping information from their servers and services, we can see, like going through the Steam store, you can see what assets are in what people's different accounts. And so what we can do is we can monitor, okay, so I'm going to be trading a knife with Ben. He's going to on-chain put that money into an escrow, an on-chain escrow, which will be a feature of PlayFi. And then the chain, our PlayFi system, will be constantly watching my account and Ben's account to see, is this knife currently in ownership of Jyro or Ben? And as soon as the system recognizes that I no longer have it and Ben does have it, it will release that chain from escrow, or that money from escrow, to me. And so we actually don't need to tokenize that asset, because we can tokenize the action of transfer. And so it gives us a way to access liquidity without requiring sort of like that buy-in from the developer. They don't know, as far as they're concerned, I just sent Ben a knife. Just like kind of as Ben was saying on those Reddit forums and like on these kind of like slightly sus skin trading websites, like as far as Counter-Strike knows, you just sent a knife to your friend, but really it's going through some person. But in this case, it never needs to go through that third party who you have to trust to eventually send it over and then eventually send back your money.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. So that's an interesting concept then. Okay. Because I think, one of the things I constantly think about when I'm talking to, blockchains, just in general, right, is there's so many service providers for everything. You need EigenLayer for data availability, or for security. You need oracles. You need X, Y, and Z, right? And that's where the fees come in, right? Like there's so much fee extraction going on that eventually it's like, who's that getting passed along to, right? And if it's the users, it's a poor user experience at the end of the day. So it's interesting to see you guys have already kind of thought through that, which is cool, right? I mean, I think that's something you've got to think about, if you want to improve the system.
I think one of the things that gaming in particular has been guilty of is finding the most elaborate solution to a problem, and being sucked in by the technical sort of mirage of like, I wonder if we can solve this, and then ending up with very, very technically clever but also elaborate solutions. And the more we look at this, the more we're like, well, the end player doesn't care. They don't care whether this happens on chain or not. They want it to be as cheap and as fast as possible. And so everything we're building is geared around what is not the most technically complex solution, but what can we do with this data that is meaningful, that is fast, and that recognizes that we're in the domain of gaming and playing. It's not like we're with some crypto startups are moving trillions of dollars around the world and storing a lot of financial value, and we deliberately haven't taken that problem on. We've taken on the problem of gaming and play, and we don't need to over-engineer our solution as a result.
This episode is brought to you by Pendle. Pendle is the market leader in the DeFi yield sector, operating as a permissionless yield trading protocol, facilitating the tokenization and splitting of any yield-bearing asset in DeFi, while creating an avenue for users to express their views on future yield or earn a fixed rate with their assets. Learn more at pendle.finance. So I wanted to get into the nodes a little bit. Walk me through, I guess maybe they're very similar, right? What's the difference between, a PlayFi node versus maybe like your standard, Ethereum node? And maybe walk us through that a little bit, because I know that's kind of a key part of your model.
So we have what we call modular nodes. And what's really cool about them is that they don't just do one thing. A lot of the times in like traditional node operating systems, they have a very specific purpose. Like they process transactions, or they store data, or they do this particular operation on the data. And so because we have this multi-part system where this data comes in, needs to be processed, needs to be indexed, needs to be proved, and then needs to be stored, we actually have our nodes doing all four of those elements. And so they're broken up into four main modules: zero knowledge modules, AI modules, coordination modules, and storage modules. Storage is pretty self-explanatory. They store the data. That's the aspect you have on. So in your node, you'll have an interface and you have 4 toggles that you'll be able to choose from. The storage modules let you store data, and they will give you blobs of data to be securely stored. The AI modules will let you do the AI processing on that really big data chunk. So again, video feeds and system monitoring and data packets will be coming in. We need to turn those into something useful, something indexable. So you'll be taking all that complex data, turning it into a text document to be stored by those storage modules. The ZK modules, the zero knowledge proof modules, are essentially going to be indexing that data, creating fingerprints for it, and allowing you to access that data. When a request comes in, we can get that data without exposing what that data is using zero knowledge proof. So it's pretty cool. They create those fingerprints, they validate that data when it's coming in and out. And the coordination modules essentially act as the bridge between external queries and all those different nodes. They talk to each other, and they also talk to base layer. They interact with eigenlayer and the AVS system to make sure that everybody's acting correctly. So that's a lot of words, but in short, our nodes are different in that they do a bunch of different things. And you can choose which of those you want to participate in based on what your system has. If you're running 10 nodes on your computer and you're about to play a game of Apex Legends, you probably want to turn off the AI processor and free up your GPU. If you run out of storage space, you can turn off the storage modules and save yourself some, availability there. So they are modular, and they are built very specific to do the jobs that the play-based element of PlayFi needs to store and process that data.
Ben, I know you mentioned earlier that, obviously partnerships are key. Is this one of those areas where you guys are targeting that? So like, obviously there's a lot of professional node operators out there, currently, on Ethereum, on other chains. Has that been a sector that you guys have been focusing on? Because it sounds like, at scale, you're probably talking about sizable amount of transactions, right? When all of this comes together. So I would imagine you guys need to bootstrap the node operator activity, relatively quickly, right? Or critically.
Absolutely. So look, having nodes as a service will be important. We'll need a lot of nodes, and we'll need enough processing power that we can ingest terabytes really of streaming data and turn it into very small packets that we can store on the blockchain. That's the complex thing that we're doing, is sort of taking large amounts of data and converting it into very small, provably fair and accurate amounts of blockchain data. And so partnerships will be key. We've got our node sale sort of launching with a couple of partners who are going to help us ensure that we have the base amount there ready to run the network, because our network won't run without these nodes. Like it'll grind to a halt. And then we'll do a public sale and hopefully be able to sort of scale progressively as the demand on our platform scales. So yeah, partnerships are key. I think one of the things we're really focused on is getting as efficient as we can with data. So for example, our AI processing, it's already able to run without needing a GPU. I've got it running on my local, just on the CPU, and it works really fine. Now, will it be able to do everything we need it to do? No. But I think one of the areas we're looking to differentiate with our nodes is you're not going to need to have a super high-powered machine in order to run some of the AI processing, because the way we've architected this is so that as many people as possible can run it.
I always say we're doing small AI, not big AI. A lot of AI in Web3 space, they're like, we're doing chat GPT on chain. And it's like, that's a really big project and good for you. We are doing more of like machine learning, small traditional AI that's designed to like just identify these games and extract the relevant information from them. So by being hyper optimized and targeted to those specific model cases, it can be really elegant, which means that we don't need to, do your math homework and tell you how to bake a cake in the same system. It just needs to do this one thing.
Oh, you stole my idea. I was going to go pitch, a bunch of venture capitalists on ChatGPT on chain. I feel like that would do pretty well.
I suspect they've probably heard that pitch a lot recently, but I mean, like, it's an option.
Somebody's always beaten me to it in this industry, I swear. So we're coming up, probably on a good time to maybe to wrap up. But before we do that, I do want to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to kind of tell the audience and I guess convey what you're excited about. What are some things coming up, for PlayFi as far as like key milestones for the launch, and how can they get involved, at this stage, if it is possible at this stage?
We came out of stealth mode just over a month ago. Paris Blockchain Week was the first time that we'd spoken about it, and really publicly. Opened the Discord, got Twitter up and running. And so anyone who's listening to this, we're still really early. Our node sale doesn't happen until July. We'll have a token launch later in the year, and we've already got a test net live, and we've already got people starting to build on that and starting to help us test it, and that's really valuable. And I guess for anyone who's interested in sort of projects at the intersection of gaming and DePIN and AI, PlayFi sort of fits that, with the advantage of this is not a team that only started thinking about this sort of a month ago. We've been, most of us have been working together for more than 2.5 years. So it's been a while in gestation. It's sort of built to this point where we really feel like we've landed on a big idea that is achievable. We've proven, we spent the first few months of building this out just proving that we could actually do it. So we can show people the demos of the AI tech working and it running over Twitch streams, and it feels a bit like magic. And yeah, I think if this sector's of interest to you, then come and join our Discord, come and help us build. And there's lots of good things happening.
Yeah, we have a lot of really exciting stuff coming up. As Ben just mentioned, we're really just we're building a lot of those partnerships that Ben's been hammering on now. Like, we're going to be announcing a lot of, I think, pretty big profile teams that we'll be working with in organizations. A lot of these chains, like I said, Multiverse X was a good example, and we're going to be continuing from there, right? So we're going to be building all these partnerships, and that means we're going to be picking up a lot of momentum in Steam, doing just a lot more engagement and partnerships. So I think now is a good time, as I mentioned, to join our Discord and kind of just like get a little bit familiar with what we're doing, because it's a chance for you to also be pretty influential in that process. We're looking for those partners. We're looking for those key community members that are going to be our evangelicals, be our advocates, help us answer some of the questions like, what's confusing about our onboarding? What cool stuff can we build on our testnet right now? So there's a huge opening for those really key community members to come in and have a big voice and a big say in what we're doing. And then, of course, those key community members are also people that we're going to work with and continue to reward as the system grows and help us build those important connections. So if you want to be one of those evangelicals, if you're curious about this space, now is the best time to get in, because we really are looking for those partners and those community members.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys both coming on. We'll have to do this again, once you guys are a little bit further down the road and things get launched. I'm really curious to kind of see how the model does once it's kind of live in the jungle. But thanks for coming on, Ben. Thanks, Jyro. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us. It was fun.
Anytime.
Yep.
Thanks, folks.
Awesome. All right. Hang tight real quick, guys.